Welcome to Clinician's Corner. Here, Molly and I will provide you with evidence-based insights and practical tools for addressing ultra-processed food addiction. This segment is designed for both individuals navigating recovery and professionals supporting clients through the treatment process. We will be bridging personal experience with clinical expertise to enhance understanding about the treatment of food addiction and the many pathways to recovery.
Each episode explores key topics such as the neurobiology of addiction, strategies for sustainable recovery, behavioral interventions, and the impact of diet trauma. We'll also discuss practical approaches for fostering self-compassion, managing setbacks, and building individualized, empowering eating practices.
Whether you are in recovery or a clinician working with clients, Clinician's Corner offers research-informed perspectives, real-world applications, and therapeutic tools to support long-term healing.
Join us the first Friday of each month for thoughtful conversations that equip you with the knowledge and strategies needed for meaningful progress in ultra-processed food addiction recovery.
Expert insights,
practical tools,
transforming recovery one conversation at a time. Hello, Molly. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So this episode is airing in 2026, but we are recording in 2025. And I thought it might be helpful to start off, because we are people who always pick words, with the word we picked for last year, maybe some reflection on it, and then the word we're picking for this year. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's good. I'm glad that I looked back at what my word was, because to be honest, I had forgotten what my word was from 2025.
Oh, isn't that interesting how that can happen? How something can be so important and impactful for you that you pick it for the whole year. And then I'm like, for the whole world. And then you can forget what it was. It has happened in the past too.
Yeah. My word was emanate. And it's so interesting. I mean, for listeners who don't maybe know us all, completely, or maybe don't live in Canada or the US, I live in the US. And, I picked my word in, it would have been 2024. For 2025, I picked emanate. I could not have known what 2025 would bring for me and my country, and what that would mean for me, my little social justice warrior heart. And I think emanate really I don't know that I got away from the spirit of the word. I don't know that I would really get away from emanate. I think that's just kind of who I am. But I did really lose sight of that's what my word was, for sure. I got really caught up in the other things, for sure. I mean, what about you? I don't even remember what your word was.
Yeah. So my word was flourishing. And I think my idea of flourishing for people who don't know, is really developing rapidly and successfully, thriving, right? It's I'm no longer in survival, I'm in thrival. And I don't know if that's a word that I just made up, but it's my word. So I had this idea.
All words are made up, folks. All words are made up. So
I had this idea that what that meant was I was going to be really successful. Things were going to be easy. Was just really starting into a new relationship. I had just got Benson. I had this idea of where sweet sobriety was going to go. And January hit and mom got cancer. I found out Benson was really ill. The relationship that I was in turned out to be not a healthy one. And so what I've learned is that actually is flourishing. I didn't drink when those things happened. I didn't eat, when those things happened. And I was able to recognize, oh, Clarissa, in this relationship, this is a pattern you've fallen into in the past, and recognize it and walk away from it. So it was really about progress and how hard this work is. But this hard work makes you flourish. And so what I was also really thinking about was, my word for this year, which I have picked, is safety. Because for me, I have recognized that the times and places and environments I'm happiest in and am flourishing in are the ones where I feel safe. So for me, this year is about hashtag safety is the new sexy. And I am really leaning into that, especially because I have become, somewhat obsessed with polyvagal theory, nervous system regulation, and like embodiment. And all of that is about safety. And so for me, I am really excited to lean into more safety practices, more safe people, more environment, people, places, and things that make me feel like I can be my authentic self.
I love that, because when we focus on or orient around safety, then we'll seek it. And when we seek it, then we can, recognize it more readily in ourselves. And when we feel safe enough, then we can get into that thriving, right? Flourishing.
Yes, thrival.
And there's like that continuation. Yeah, thrival. Exactly. There's the continuation. That's really neat. I really like that. My word for 2026 is going to be permission.
Ooh,
yeah.
Molly.
So I give myself permission to disappoint people this year. And I give myself permission to need more than this, whatever that means. And I give myself permission to be me, right? Like I give myself permission. It's permission, permission, permission. And not permission to, do the things that I know are not like good for me, right? Not to be destructive or self-destructive, but give myself permission to do the things that I have spent a lifetime or many lifetimes, like, I guess maybe like not doing in order to make other people happy or be the good girl, right? Like the outward facing. Yeah, the rules. Exactly. I'm going to break a little more rules, be a little more disruptive, push a little more boundaries. Yeah. Be a little more me, a little more rebellious.
Yes, I love this for you. I think I'm already now so excited for our year, and we have like only 2 weeks until we're there.
Right. I know. So now the solution focused part of me though is like, okay, I know in 2025, I lost sight of my word. And so I'm like trying to ask myself like a solution focused question of like, hey, Mo, like, how are you going to remember this is your word? Like, this is what you want to do. You will give yourself permission. You want to remember that you have permission to be you. And I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to remember that yet, but I imagine that permission is something that I'm going to talk a lot more with our group members about. And I imagine it's something that I'm going to talk to you a lot more about. And I'm just saying this for my own accountability, because I know the more I talk about it right now in this moment, I'm more likely to remember a little bit later. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, how am I going to remember?
No, that's helpful. So I'm already dating somebody who initially has already felt safer than anybody who I've ever dated before. I am creating liberation modules all around safety, nervous system regulation, polyvagal theory. I am also going to be at our retreat with all our group members who feel super safe. And I am really interested in that podcast we did with Jan Winhall. She has a course based on polyvagal theory that I'm really interested in investing in to help with more self-compassion work and safety work for the people that we work with.
Totally.
Yay! All right. So we're going to talk about a topic today that might feel a little unsafe to people. So we had an amazing conversation with Dr. Erica Lafata last season about what if volume addiction is actually binge eating disorder once the ultra processed foods are removed. And I think, people are still noticing they want to, in general, even be over consuming whole foods, maybe at every meal or maybe just in general. And I think this is a great thing that we can start to discuss and like most things in this field, we probably aren't going to walk away today with a clear, concrete answer as to what this is because there's no research. And so we're just going to use our clinical backgrounds and maybe what we know about binge eating disorder, food addiction to kind of surmise, what this phenotype might look like and what are some potential solutions or treatments or practices we can put in place if I am someone who identifies with this.
Yeah, for sure.
So is volume addiction just binge eating disorder without ultra processed foods? My short answer would be sometimes yes and sometimes no. And sometimes it could be something completely different, right? I don't think volume addiction equals binge eating disorder that used to equal ultra processed food use disorder. I think what would let us know this might be binge eating disorder is like looking at maybe some of the DSM qualifications or considerations around this, which would be one, loss of control, right? So that feeling of being unable to stop, slow down, maybe eating faster than normal, kind of that what we talked to Jan about, how people use food to disassociate, numb, or they feel like compulsive desire to eat. I think the next thing we would look at is clinically significant distress. So they feel shame, they feel secrecy, emotional pain. It's really impacting their life. And then we got to look at frequency, right? So this is happening for them at least like more than once a week and for a consistent period of more than 3 months. And then we also have to make sure this is not driven by dieting, meaning it's not exclusively like that restriction binge, I guess, phenomenon that occurs. And so if someone is removing the ultra processed foods, and they're still eating lots of whole foods, they feel out of control, they're experiencing that urgency, and this is continuing long term, then yes, this may reflect binge eating disorder. Even whole foods can become part of the binge episodes because binge eating disorder is primarily driven by reward and habit learning, emotional regulations, challenges, impulsivity, even ADHD links, trauma, nervous system, hyperarousal, shame, and avoidance of internal stress. So the food type doesn't necessarily diagnose binge eating disorder. It's all about the relationship. But when it might actually not be binge eating disorder, so sometimes volume eating is not even a psychiatric disorder at all, right? It's biology, it's nervous system adaptation, or learned survival behavior. And so if we are, after years, right, as so many of us who come to food addiction recovery we've been doing years of deprivation diets, over restrictions and chaotic, blood sugar. And so it may take a while, which is what I see so commonly in clients, even with this volume addiction phenotype that we talk about, is after a while, it does resolve. That people start to feel more empowered and more in control. And I think this is because it just takes time for the hunger hormones to normalize. There's still that bit of like metabolic safety checking that comes into play. And the body temporarily prefers lots of volume to feel that kind of safe. So that can feel scary, but it might be repair, right? Like we talked about that withdrawal, right? Initially, when we were first trying to like really break it down. So this might be repair, not pathology. I think there is still this hedonic pathway, neural wiring that is still starting to calibrate our whole life. We've been hedonically seeking relationship with food. And now we are removing that, right? So the brain is still like, where's my reward? It's still like, oh, every mealtime could be habitual cue triggered dopamine learning loops. And it still expects those big eating events, even the binges that used to occur when I used to use ultra processed foods. And so it's still seeking that potentially. I also think there's a huge part, like we talked about with Jan, that just food doesn't have to be ultra processed food, is nervous system regulating, is emotional regulating. This is why emotional eating exists. There is an aspect of self soothing, grounding, numbing, comfort, a way, like there's no better way for me, and I'll say this honestly, to go from Clarissa, who's in sympathetic stress, to peace and like relax and really quiet my brain. And this makes sense with my ADHD, but it also makes sense with trauma. And so this is again a nervous system survival strategy in disguise. So that's what kind of makes me think that, we could be dealing with a whole bunch of things here. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. And I think because of that, this term volume addiction, it's so funny because we didn't have a term, or I didn't have a term for it. Then this term comes along and I kind of latched onto it because I was like, oh, there's like something to name it. And then the longer I sat with it, I think like the trauma informed me, and the mental health clinician me was like, I don't like this at all, because it's like one more like addiction that like now we're like adding to the pile. People are adding to the pile, like one more sickness we're like adding to the list. And I just don't love it because because to your point, it doesn't adequately describe what's actually happening, because it's this like blanket term that it could be any one of those other things. And there's actually a name for any one of those other things. And none of them is volume addiction.
Yeah. And I think it also initially makes so much sense for us being addiction clinicians that we would see this through the lens of addiction. And I think, what's so interesting looking back now is fortunately both of us are eating disorder informed. And what I was doing with my clients who identified as volume addicts, I was using binge eating disorder treatment with them. And so it's so funny that only in that episode with Erica was I like, oh, I kind of already figured this out, but really, we hadn't talked about it openly. I know me and you were going back and forth and we were like, we need to stop this. We started something that we need to like slow down. But I don't think we were having these discussions openly in a public forum like this, which.
No. And I think it's because it's hard, right? Because how do you talk to, and we've talked about this before, because when you show up in food addiction spaces and we start talking about, listen, when we get the substance use disorder piece of it out of the way, and then, and I talk about this with our clients, right? And I say, hey, let's give our brains 30 to 45 days to stabilize. And let's see what shakes out in the first 3 to 6 months. And let's see what's still there. Is there still, mood disorder? Is, maybe the trauma is going to show up, what's there? This is when we're going to see what looks like, what appears to be volume addiction, or what appears to be whatever it is, right? And it's really hard in those straight food addiction spaces to start talking about this, because a lot of people are not trained clinicians like we are. They're coaches who come from, 12-step world, or they're trained specifically to be food addiction coaches. And I'm not trying to disparage those professionals at all. But what I'm saying is that they're trained specifically to be food addiction coaches. And so they're not trained in this area where we are, because our education and our knowledge and our skill level is broader than that, because of because we were trained broader than that. And so we get kind of shut down in those spaces. So I think it has been harder to talk about that. And I think in being shut down in that, the people pleaser in me gets really quiet. Right? I go to freeze. I just shut up. I just shut down. And I'm like, okay, you don't want to hear what I have to say. I'll just be quiet then. I'll just go sit in my corner and I'll be quiet. But that's not really who I am. So again, 2026, permission to be me.
Permission.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Permission to be me. I'm kind of loud. I'm in charge Marge. I'm going to be loud. So, So, so I think like being able to talk about this in these kinds of spaces will be important, because you're right. When we can show up and say like, hey, but what if this is actually more like something that's along the lines of something that's more psychological, emotional, social? What if it is something more hormonally driven, or this, that, or like, what if we could think more broadly about it? And what if we could show up and support you in that way? What if at Sweet Sobriety, we actually could hold space for that and help walk you through that in a way that didn't demand that you were 100% abstinent perfectly in these very specific ways, in a very defined, whatever your abstinence is defined for you? What if we allowed you to experiment with what that definition is? And we have found, even if it's been a painfully like a painful growing experience for people,
If
what we have
it's
found though,
messy, right?
it's messy, but growth is painful and messy.
Recovery is messy. That's exactly what the magic is
It
made
just
of.
makes me think of my baby nephew, and I call him my baby nephew, but he is 6 months older than my daughter. So like he's been 13 for 6 months, and my daughter just turned 13, right? But I remember he was probably like 3 or 4 years old, and he was just growing so fast. And he used to go, my legs, because his legs were just growing so fast and they just hurt. Right. And that's what I think of with what we're doing with people, right? With our growth, our recovery, right? It's painful. And I just think my legs, like, yes, it hurts sometimes, right? Because we are having to challenge old thoughts, old actions, old emotions, old hurts. And it's not always fun and pretty. And like, we are used to people telling us what to do. That feels safe. To go back to your word, right? Like that feels safe. We've always been told what to do. And we're like, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And we'll do what we're told. And if I just do what I'm told, then everything will be okay. But that hasn't actually worked for us.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, because you're right. It's like in these spaces we often find ourselves in, it's like they want this, rigid idea of healing, and this is the protocol. And that's not actually how healing works or happens, or treatment at all. It's going to look different for everybody. There's going to be highs and lows. And I think we do even, we talked about this even at the food addiction conference, there wasn't a ton of talk about treatment. We're only comfortable talking about the things we quote unquote know, and that these are facts and these are research, but I'm pretty sure nothing amazing was ever created only talking about those things.
No, and here's the thing, we have talked to the people who have researched these things, and they have told us, listen, clinically, you people are seeing it 20 years before the research shows it.
Yeah.
That means that you and I, who have been in the business, well, maybe not in food for 2 decades, but we've been in substance use disorder and mental health for 20 years.
Yeah.
We have already been doing it for 20 years. The research is just now catching up with us.
No, it's so true. And so I think one of the things I hope to do more is talk about more nuanced topics like this, and the complex layers of healing when it comes to things like this, because I hope it inspires others to ask questions rather than to just accept maybe limitations that they put on themselves because of terms like this, or fitting into this thing of this is who I am because this is my quote unquote pathology.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that's just it. We talk about this a lot. Labels are really neat in that they offer us, they can take away shame, and that like this whole, right, we can get stuck in these cycles of like, I'm broken. Why can't I be normal like everybody else? And then it's like, oh, actually it's, like there's actually like something not like the same about you as there is about the other person for one of many reasons or whatever, right? Like there's actually a name for what's happening to you. And there's actually treatment protocols that we can look into, or there are interventions for it. And that can be really like shame busting.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing that way. But those same labels can also keep us stuck and sick and small.
And in shame.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a matter of like walking in there. And And then it's also difficult to talk about this too, because in those same spaces, when we're talking about treatment about these things, our, colleagues in the eating disorder world, and we talk about this a lot, but I'm going to keep talking about it. But our colleagues in the eating disorder world who are straight eating disorder will get upset with us when we talk about but our client, if they eat this, that, or the other thing, it will absolutely send them into a binge. And so right? So that's a thing that they're going to not eat. And that's okay in our world, that they don't eat the chocolate cake.
Right. Because I would say one of the treatment interventions for binge eating disorder in the eating disorder world is sometimes to not restrict certain foods. And so we wouldn't be, obviously recommending that to somebody who's already identified that this is something that amplifies their compulsion and desire to move or desire to eat and loss of control. Right. Around their relationship with food. So we want to be I think it would be helpful to talk a little bit about what are some of the practices that might be helpful for individuals who are identifying with this phenotype. And when we look at some of those core elements, I think we are looking at some kind of regular eating structure, reducing shame, breaking that binge restriction cycle, but in terms of volume of food and quality of food, that respects our already pre-existing journey. We need to do a bit of behavior and thought retraining. Emotional coping skills are going to be huge. And again, looking at our values and identity and meaning building in our life. And so I think one thing we know and we have found among our community members is the importance of somatic and nervous system work here, especially when our number one coping strategy is binging to regulate my emotions. And so this may require me to start working with people who are polyvagal informed or embodied or somatically informed. It may require a level of somewhat trauma stabilization first, because if I am constantly actively reliving trauma in the trauma cycle, these binge eating episodes will be amplified. It will also be about mindful eating, right? Being able to slow down, tune into our interoceptive awareness, tune into what does it actually feel like in my body? And I am feeling satiated, and what is enough, and tolerating a level of fullness that I'm not necessarily used to. I may want more, but there is a retraining process that I can feel satiety slowly if I allow myself. But I think the biggest part of this is going to be embodiment practices. And this is hard because the field we work in is very head related. Oh, I'm going to weigh, yes. Right? I'm going to weigh and measure, and this is going to be the self-binding practice, and this is going to keep me safe. And I would say that is a false sense of safety.
Yeah, agreed, because that works until it doesn't. Right. And the thing about what we're trying to offer people is internal resources versus these external resources.
That's terrifying, Molly.
It is terrifying. And I think the other piece about what we are trying to offer people is that it's not a quick fix, where when it's weighed and measured, when it's whatever, that's all very diet adjacent. And I'm saying adjacent to be kind because I really believe it's diet culture. I mean, again, permission to be you, Molly. Okay, let's call it what it is. That is absolutely 100% diet culture. I'm just going to name it. But here's the thing. So because it is we're offering internal resources, and it is something that is going to take a period of time to learn. It is a harder sell, if you will, right? It is harder to sell what we are trying to sell.
But I would also say it's something that will offer long-term lasting recovery once you get there.
Well, agreed. Absolutely. Because it's something you can take with you. It's something you can take with you forever and ever. I can never take it back. I can never be like, well, I'm going to revoke it and repossess it and whatever, whatever it might be. And so here's the thing, right? When we can offer, teaching mindfulness, somatic work, being that interoreceptive awareness, how to soothe your own nervous system, self-compassion, how to change that self-talk. Like between my favorite self-compassion and your somatics, like our clients are like, they're like, and I showed up with so much self-compassion, and then I did the self-soothing and I did the whatever. And I'm just like, because I'll just be like asking, like, how did you get through that? How did you whatever? And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like you should be running group right now.
I know.
I should be paying you.
I love when they say, oh, I heard Molly and Clarissa in our head. And I'm like, no, my friend, what you heard was compassion. The compassion you now have for yourself in a difficult moment. And that is the magic. And that is the nervous system regulation.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's just it, And so it's like, that is the foundational kind of stuff that is going to actually get at this, whether it be binge eating disorder or volume or emotional eating or whatever it might be, because, this amount of food, large amount of food, the loss of control, the using this substance, I don't care if it's food or alcohol, binge, whatever it is, fill in the blank. It's trying to scratch an itch, just trying to scratch an itch that it's never going to scratch because it's not what you're seeking.
And it's really almost completely socially acceptable in our current culture. And I think it's because our society is so dysregulating these days, right? Binge watching Netflix. Like, when would that ever have been in the past to say, oh, I'm going to spend a whole day and watch TV all day, and that's going to make me feel good? Nope. Binge drinking. Right? To blackout. There's a culture around that. I will say less people are drinking, but there is still a big binge drinking versus like, oh, I'm going to have a glass of wine with dinner. There's a binge drinking culture. Binge eating, right? It's like, oh, bet you can't eat just one. It's like the whole idea is to create the binge and the loss of control and the inability to stop. So I really think we need to start working with these really gentle eating frameworks where we are not treating whole food volume by restriction or shame. We're just supporting structured meals, right? Structure equals safety, adequate protein, healthy carbohydrates and fats, stability, blood sugar regulation, satiety, confidence. I think is also something we need to start leaning more into. Safety around food and really this inner knowing, right? This interoception, this what does it feel like? How do I know when I'm thirsty? How do I know when I'm actually hungry? This inner self-trust that we have to start to rebuild for that longevity in, I think, any kind of eating disorder related recovery.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't even know that we need to go beyond that. I just feel like that's it. That's the show. Stamp.
Yeah.
The end.
Exciting. And we'd love to hear if there are more topics that you want us to cover in the future that maybe maybe we are going to have differing opinions on. Maybe, it's not something, or it's been talked about by someone else and you want our perspective on it. We really want to get pretty raw this season, and we encourage you to come along this journey with us and help us go there with you. So what's the email address they can reach us at?
foodjunkiespodcast@gmail.com.
All right. And we will see you next month.
Yay. Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group, I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.